So under a recent video I published, Developer Tech to Watch in 2020, I make a couple of comments about what technologies that I think are cool. Maybe I'll link to it here. I don't know. You can look around, check out my channel. So there's a couple of comments I just want to highlight. I pinned this one by a guy named Koba. His last name is Koba. Anyway, this guy wrote, I listened to your advice about Flutter. This is a while back. Studied it, and now I'm hired. Thank you. And then another guy wrote pretty much the same thing. He said, yeah, I listened to your advice as well. Got a job at Flutter. So that's just one example of my mega nerd predictive skills based on being in the development game for 269 years. It gives me a perception of what's going on out there, but you might not see otherwise. It's also because I look at it from the point of view of snakes. No, I look at it from the point of view of the business point of view, having run businesses. So I look at it from a technology point of view, and I look at it from a business point of view, and I just look at history and I look at trends. Human behavior is consistent, by the way. What motivates nerds 25 years ago, what motivates businesses and their technology choices 25 years ago is the same today. The technologies change a little, of course, but the motivations are the same. And you combine those two things, and you can make some pretty accurate predictions about the stuff. All right, I'm going to answer this guy, Dicko, and Omar Dicko. And so he says, hi, Stef. I hope you're doing good. Now I'm studying CS at university, and to be honest, I'm a little disappointed. All the passion I had before starting classes has disappeared. I'm lost, and I don't know what to do. I try myself to find passion. I don't know if I read that right or whatever. I tried to find the passion that I had, but more days go by and the more I regret my choice. The curriculum is a real hell with a program of the 90s, not really, but just to give you an idea how bad it is. I'm lost and really need your advice. If you're going to university and you're not really paying for it, or the cost of going to university is minimal, and if you're a couple years into it, I don't know how long is he into this, depending on how far along you are, if you're like a year or two into it and you got another year or two to go, and your goal is to get work, your goal is to maybe work for a large corporation, then since you're not paying for it or it's very inexpensive, then I would just tough it out, bite down, tough it out, get that piece of paper. Because remember, one of the things you got to develop in life is reputation. A CS degree is a good way to start establishing reputation. The best way, of course, is experience. So what you could do on the side to help spice it up for you, you could start doing freelance work. Take your skills, basic low-level jobs, entry-level stuff in coding, and it could be any type of coding, just so you start developing those skills, working with clients, writing code, providing deliverables, etc., etc., etc. This is a big part of it. A big part of career. Also learn how interpersonal skills, how to deal with clients and so on. So what happens, you think about your university training as a way to establish reputation. Once you have a CS degree, you have it, nobody can take it away from you, and it has a certain amount of value. Then on the other side, you can develop real-world skills, working for clients, doing projects, making money, and you combine the two. You got to bite down and eat your vegetables with the CS degree, and have fun with the work and start making money there. On the other hand, if the CS degree is putting you into massive debt and you're not enthusiastic about it, and your goal is maybe to become an entrepreneur or do small business development, then I would not go into the massive debt with the CS degree. That is for sure. You don't want to go there. You don't want to go there. What I would do in that situation, personally, I would leave and I would start just doing work as a freelancer, start developing my portfolio there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's another route of doing it. Now, third possibility is that you're just jumping into it and you're hitting the initial and oftentimes expected roadblocks when learning software development in the first little while. It can be a daunting task, especially if the teachers are not terribly good. So one thing you could do is check out some of my courses. I don't want to be a salesman here, but let's say you're having trouble with OOP. I'm going to actually put out a big lengthy video on object-oriented Python very soon, by the way. There you go. So consider those facts I just mentioned: your cost, your ultimate goal, your cost university, your ultimate goal. Think about mentally thinking about your CS degree as just a way of building a reputation and credentialing yourself rather than the knowledge in of itself, although I'm sure you're going to get something out of it. And take it from there. I hope that helps. I can understand the situation. There are certain things, it's just like, certain types of work, it's just like pulling teeth. It's just, oh my God. I hate doing accounting. I have accountants and I have a bookkeeper, but I still, to do my year end for my corporations, I have to get involved, and I just can't stand that stuff, but I still have to do it. So what I do is I just try to segment my task, all the things I have to do, and I just try to do one thing or half a thing every day. Even if it's just 10, 20 minutes, it pushes the ball forward, That's my advice. Somebody asks, what is a PWA and how does it work with programming languages? PWA is short for Progressive Web App. In a nutshell, and you can Google this for yourself, but in a nutshell, PWA is a mobile app that is developed using web technology. And it basically uses the advanced features of HTML5, which of course you enable with JavaScript, that allows you to make a web-based application feel and act more like a native application. It isn't perfect, but I think it's the future for various reasons. Next question, aiming work in large companies in 2020, would you rather C# or Java? Your work here is amazing. Keep on doing it. Ciao. It depends on where you live. Some areas, some big corporations will be Microsoft C# involved. Others will be Java. It really depends on the company. I think you're going to see more Java overall, but again, regionally, I remember Germany, apparently they're big into C#.NET. So just start looking around at the companies you're interested in working at in your area or in the areas you want to work at, and then find out what they use, and then start learning those stacks. That's pretty much it. Another question, does this mean that C# and .NET Core framework will also continue to see light in the future, considering the fact that it is a Microsoft technology and it is open source? Yeah, C#.NET, it isn't going anywhere. You can definitely count on it being around for many years to come. So if you get into C#.NET, there'll be plenty of work. I would be flabbergasted if C#.NET started to fail. How can learn load balancing? Any resources, please? There's not much to it nowadays. With advanced hosting, load balancing should be done that way. In the old days, we have to engineer it. Don't even bother now. With DigitalOcean, for instance, I use that as one of my providers. You basically set up a virtualized server, and you just say, click a button, make this a load balancer, and then you create a bunch of other virtualized servers where you install your application, and you connect it to your load balancer, and bing, bang, boom, Bob's your uncle. That's all you need to know, and it takes care of all the details for you, as it should be. Michael asks, can you do a video on how to organize code for beginners with and without classes? I may have done some, but in my web stack, Python, JavaScript, PHP course, even my HTML course, I teach you how to do that as you learn how to code. Any good code course should be teaching you this along the way. If they don't, So many comments where people listen to Stef about Flutter. Laugh aloud. Flutter should be paying Stef for popularizing it. Yeah, that's right. Hey, Google, what's going on here? Come on. Hey, Stef, nice insight about the crazy technologies that's about to get big in 2020. Great takeaway as always. Thank you. This is from Valian Mazdidani. I think I said that right. Anyway, I kind of have a question. What's your take on the emerging programming languages, especially the ones used for web development like Elm, Rust, Elixir, Crystal, etc.? Are these languages worth to learn for investment in the future or just fad? If possible, I'd appreciate it if you made a video about it. Thank you. I don't need to make a whole video, but I actually did a video I talked about Elm and TypeScript, whether or not they'll replace JavaScript. So you got part of your answer there. At the end of the day, I always teach that you don't chase after the new language or technologies unless you have a job to do now or you have a job that you're targeting specifically. What I always suggest, very different from I guess a lot of other people, is you concentrate on your basics. Once you're comfortable with the basics, so if you're doing web stack as an example, you know your HTML5 well, your CSS3, you understand HTTP, web servers, client server, relationships, all this kind of stuff. You understand a back-end language, whether it be JavaScript with Node or PHP Laravel or Python Django. Once you have your foundations down, and of course databases as well, you should understand the relational databases, SQL, understand when to use a relational database versus a NoSQL database. Once you have that, what I suggest, you go out there and you do a couple of real gigs. And because the real learning when it comes to coding is when you're actually earning money, right? I learned this through hard practice and in my own experiences, but also I get this from my business experience. You know, you can get an MBA or you can go to business school, but you don't really understand business until you actually start running a business for real. Same thing with fighting. When I was into martial arts and boxing, I would just step in the ring and fight. I told people many, many times in many videos, I say, one sparring session, 5 rounds, 3 minutes apiece, whatever type of sparring that you do, full contact, one sparring session is worth months of training outside of the ring. So you want to get in the ring as a developer, as a coder, whatever your specialization has to be, whether it be web stack or system automations or basic AI, machine learning, I don't know. Whatever it happens to be, whatever your focus happens to be, you got to get into the world. You got to get in the ring. You got to start writing real world code rather than trying to learn this language, this framework, that framework in anticipation of a job that may or may not come. This way, you won't waste your time learning, let's say, ActionScript, and then you find the whole thing falls apart. So Elm might be a great language, who knows? What else would you? Rust, Elixir, they all have their advantages, I'm sure, given certain situations. But like the Delphi programmers discovered, even though the Delphi guys, the visual Delphi guys back in the 90s thought rightly that in many respects it was superior to VB, Microsoft's VB, Delphi went nowhere and VB was by far dominant. So if you would have spent time learning Delphi on your own and not getting paid to learn, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm a Delphi guy, where are the jobs? No jobs. No, doesn't work that way. Again, learn your basics, foundations, get comfortable, do a couple of real gigs. Don't get caught up in tutorials for 10 years. I know people do that because they're afraid to get in the ring. Understand that when you get in there and you're learning and you're writing code, you're constantly learning as you go. Best developers have an open mind and are able to learn and on the go and learn different things. And that all comes down to the foundations once again. That's why I don't have courses on all these new languages and frameworks and stuff like that. There's plenty out there on YouTube, number one. Number two, it's not important unless you have a job specifically requiring that you use Elm or specifically requiring that you do Node, etc., etc., etc. So if you adopt my philosophy, you're going to save a lot of time. You're going to get to a point where you're productive and making money much more quickly. You won't get caught in tutorial hell, and you won't find yourself going down some nerd rabbit hole learning a technology that you think that is going to be the greatest thing ever, and it turns out it doesn't. Because once you understand your foundations, to learn some new tech, some new language, some new framework, not that difficult. Not that difficult. Because remember, all this stuff that we see now, the whole programming world has become pretty mature in the last 20 years. All this technology is very mature, very similar in many respects. If you look at the difference between TypeScript and JavaScript, there are significant differences, but for you to move from one to the other is like this, if you understand the fundamentals. And in terms of frameworks, as I've explained in previous videos, in terms of frameworks, all a framework is, it's like a hamburger. Like a Big Mac. Big Mac, you got buns, you got sauces, you got tomatoes and pickles and something that's kind of like meat and yada, yada, yada. Now, if you look at it as a whole, it looks complex. But if you understand your fundamentals, you're able to break up your burger into the individual little pieces. It makes it easy to understand. Software's like that too. Frameworks are like that too. It's just layered basics. That's what I found in my own learning process back in the day. When I would run across something that I did not understand, a framework or language or a concept, it was usually because there was some fundamental concept or technique I didn't grasp. And that lack of understanding, that hole in my foundational knowledge would cause a ripple effect. It would make it difficult for me to understand this more elaborate technology, which at the end of the day, again, is just basic stuff, foundational stuff layered on top of each other. If one of those layers is opaque, one of those elements is unclear to you, it will mess up the whole game. So if you understand your basics, you're going to go, okay, this is just this, boom, you're done. Anyway, I hope that helps. This is a long, long video. So, we'll talk later.